So I saw Ghostbusters Frozen Empire in theaters yesterday. Now I was really excited for this movie. I loved Ghostbusters Afterlife, the previous movie, and I loved the original Ghostbusters film. And I love the new characters in the Afterlife film, the previous film. So like I said, I was really excited for this. I thought this was a major step down from Afterlife. Like definitely to me a step down quality wise. So let me start with the positives. I think the villain looks cool. I like the ice powers with the villain. I think the visual effects look great for the ghosts. And I do think this movie does try to expand the lore and expand the team with new characters. But there's a lot of negatives I have with this movie. First negative is that this movie took a while to get going. Personally, for me, it just felt like the pacing took was really slow for the first half of the movie, and the villain. I have two issues with the villain. I think the villain should have showed up, and that kind of connects to the pacing for me personally, where the villain showed up too late in the movie. Like they do like a scene earlier, we do an exposition dump of an information dump about the backstory of the villain, but he doesn't really show up until late on in the movie. And the other negative I have with the villain is that he ends up just feeling like another generic villain. Like the third act of Ghostbusters film is beating a bad guy trying to take over the world again. And plus, I'm a little tired of that. And it's also something I've seen in plenty of superhero movies. And just overall, the villain just didn't come off compelling or interested in me. Like, it has a creepy design, and I like the ice powers, but the villain showed up too late, and overall, the villain ended up being a generic take over the world villain I've seen a million times, and it just overall the villain just didn't really I didn't find the villain compelling and just kind of forgettable in the movie to me. So the villain was generic and comparable at the end of the movie personally for me. The humor didn't work in this movie for me. And I know this movie wasn't directed by the director who did Afterlife. And for me, I felt that. This movie felt flat. It felt just kind of like it felt like a movie they were just doing to put out a Ghostbusters movie. It lacked the emotional punch of Afterlife, which I thought did a great job of having great humor like the original Ghostbusters movies, but also had an emotional like punch to it with the characters and had great character development. But this movie just it felt kind of soulless to me, and I did feel like I was missing the previous director. And the humor just felt very flat to me. I didn't find it funny in this movie, and I know the new director was inspired by the Ghostbusters anime series, which I've never seen, but this felt like Ghostbusters 2. And from what I heard, the Ghostbusters anime series kind of has more of a fun vibe with it. This felt like this movie got sillier and goofier than Afterlife. Like Afterlife and the original Ghostbusters movie felt like it had a perfect balance of horror and comedy. This felt like Ghostbusters 2, where it got too silly and goofy for me, and the comedy just did not land for me. Like, I just didn't find it funny. And then another thing with this movie, and this is the biggest issue with this movie, is there's just too many characters. Also, there's just too many ideas, too. Like, those are the two big issues with this movie for me. Is that there's too many ideas in this movie. Feels like there's like 20 ideas in this movie or something like that. Like 10, 20 ideas where they had ideas for like two movies and they crammed it all into one movie. Because this movie isn't long. And when you have that many story ideas, it felt like this movie needed to be longer to flesh out a lot of stuff. And like I said, I would say the number one thing, slightly over too many story ideas, is that there's just, like I said, too many characters. You have the original cast, you have the Afterlife cast, and then you have a bunch of new characters. And I feel like the Afterlife cast, I love those characters in the Afterlife movie. I feel like they got great character development in that movie. In this movie, the character development felt like it went out the window. Like, and this movie just felt so lighthearted and goofy to the point where I feel like nobody took anything serious in this movie. Again, that has to do with the tone, but like, so when it comes to all the characters, you have the actress who played Phoebe Spangler's granddaughter, and they give her a storyline in this movie where the character's not 18 enough, so she gets benched on the Ghostbusters team, and she's feeling she's being pushed aside because she's not old enough to be a Ghostbuster. And so she meets this teen girl ghost, and I didn't connect with the story, and also the story just felt out of place in a Ghostbusters movie. and it just felt cliche, predictable. And what I mean by predictable and cliche is that I wasn't shocked where they took the character. Like the dressing they took the character, I wasn't really that big of a fan of, and that's because it just felt very predictable. Like, oh, I saw that tone coming. So, and so far I didn't really connect with the character, and also I didn't really understand where they were going with the relationship. Like I couldn't tell if they were trying to make it seem like they were friends, or there was like, or if there was like a romantic attraction there. Because it felt like in one scene they were gonna kiss. It just I couldn't just tell what direction they were going. Like I said, it just felt out of place. It felt super predictable, cliche. Didn't connect really to the story. And I felt like she had a better story in Afterlife. Like in Afterlife, I felt like the story they gave the Phoebe character, where she feels like she's not, she doesn't feel like she fits with the family. She feels she's, it shows she's awkward, weird, and her trying to, like her connecting to her grandfather, and why is that he was just like her. It just felt like to me that Afterlife just had a really great emotional story and great character development with the new characters. And I feel like Phoebe's story in this, she definitely gets the most story out of the new Afterlife cast from the previous movie. But I feel like she had a better storyline in Afterlife when it came to her like trying to when she felt like she when Afterlife with the stories about her like feeling out of place in the family and not quite fitting in, and having that connection to her grandfather who realized that he was just like, oh. I just felt like to me the character development kind of wasn't great in this movie. I feel like she just had a more compelling story in Afterlife. And when it comes to the actor who played the brother, Finn Wolfhard, I feel like he was wasted in this movie. They set up an idea of his character, and this is going back to the one of the issues I have with this movie where there's too many ideas, that he wants to drive the Ghostbusters car and that he wants to feel like more an adult in the team. But they don't flush it out. That's another thing. They have all these ideas in this movie, but I never feel like they actually like they never feel flushed out. And this movie just feels very unfocused with too many stuff going on. So I feel like nothing gets really developed or flushed out with the ideas they had in this movie. And then they also understand why he's like trying to find Slimer. Which, look, I love the Slimer character, but I feel like Slime was kind of pointless to be in here. Doesn't really connect to the villain. It was like this little side thing that doesn't connect to the main plot. I mean, the Phoebe ghost thing kind of felt like a side thing to me, but it does connect to the villain in some way. I don't want to spoil it. But the whole slime thing just felt like this subplot that I just didn't really care for. And also, I just felt like they didn't know what to do with his character in this movie. It was like they just gave him that slime subplot just to give him something to do. And it just felt like it just felt like they didn't know what to do with his character in this movie. And I love this character from the last movie, but it seemed like they just wasted him in this movie. And then the actress who plays Phoebe's mother and Finn Wolfhard's character's mom, I loved her character in the last movie. I thought they did. What I really liked about her character in the last movie is that she was very likable. She was rough around the edges. And I love that emotional part in the last movie about her character where she thinks her father, one of the original Ghostbusters, she thinks her father like abandoned the family, and you realize how emotional arc in that movie is. So realize like her seeing that her father kept an eye on her, and he did it to protect his family, to protect the world. And I really felt like she had a great grounded emotional arc in that movie. In this movie, I wasn't a fan of the way they wrote her character. She didn't really come off likable in this movie compared to the last movie. And again, she was another kid that just felt wasted in this movie. Like I feel like they didn't have anything for a character to do. So I feel like she doesn't really get any character development in this movie, and I feel like she had a better story arc and character development in the last movie. Paul Rudd. I love Paul Rudd. I thought it was really funny in the last movie. And I like the idea of his story where he's trying to, he's not sure whether he should be a dad to the kids in this movie, especially the Phoebe character. And he doesn't want to be, he wants to be the best friend, but he also has to be hard on them sometimes. So I like that whole story arc there. I felt like there was something there, but they don't flush it out. And other than about having so many characters in this movie, they're jumping around to all these different characters, and it feels like I said, nothing feels focused and tight like Afterlife. It feels like they put a bunch of ideas in this movie and just didn't flush them out enough, and they were all undeveloped. Including Paul Wall's character story, where he's not sure whether, like where he fits in the family, about like being a father, a dad, Phoebe. So I feel like overall that wasn't fleshed out enough. You don't really get too much time with him and the actress who played the kid's mom in the last movie when it comes to scenes with them together. So I just feel like Paul Wall was kind of. I feel like they gave something. They had an idea with Paul Wall's character that could have been interesting if you actually focused on it. But it just feels like very surface level. Another thing about this movie is that all the characters are separated a lot of times. So it reminded me of Last Jedi, where they had all the characters separated, and to me that hurt the movie because you were jumping around so much, and you just weren't able to really get attached to any idea or storyline in this movie because, again, everything didn't feel like it was flushed out, and it just felt like they couldn't really pick a thing to focus on. And then the character Lucky, because I believe that's the. Yeah, Lucky, the girl from the last movie that Finn Wolfhard's character liked. Man, she was just pointless in this movie. They like gave her really nothing to do. Like the Phoebe character and Paul Wall character, I can tell they at least had some type of idea there for a story with their characters, even though I felt like I think they weren't flushed out enough, like any of the storylines. But the Lucky character, they really gave her like nothing to do in this movie. She's just kind of there. And that's another thing about this movie. It feels like they just brought characters back just to have them in the movie. I don't feel like they knew what to do with a lot of the characters. And it just felt like they didn't have like a storyline for some of these characters, and they were just kind of wasted. So I felt like the Lucky character didn't have anything to do in this movie. Now when it comes to the original Ghostbusters, Bill Murray as Peter Venkman, he basically was an extended cameo in this movie. Like, he pops up for a scene, and then he comes back towards the end of the movie to help out. And one of the things I kind of was annoyed and disappointed in this movie, too, was the fact that, okay, I had no problem with them Ghostbusters having a cameo in After. Like, to me, I thought that was great, because it was a surprise. And they showed up when they needed to. And when they said they were going to have the original Ghostbusters in this movie more, I was like, okay, that sounds cool. But you don't see Bill Murray interact with the new characters at all in this movie, except for, like, barely towards the end. And I just felt like it felt like a cameo, but they extended it. Like, he does nothing in this movie. He's just there to be there. So I feel like he was wasted in this movie. When it comes to the Winston character, I like the dress of his character where he's financing the Ghostbusters and he still has love for the Ghostbusters. But I felt like even he could have been in it more. Like, I'll say this, he doesn't feel like an extended cameo though. I do feel like I would say out of the original Ghostbusters, he's the one that gets the second most screen time out of the original three. But I felt like he could have been in it more. I felt like you could have seen the originals interact more with the new cast. And I feel like they just didn't do enough with the original cast either, how they were used. When it comes to Dan Aykroyd, who plays Way, I do think he gets, I would say out of the original Ghostbusters, I think he gets the most interesting story. But it never felt like it was flushed out enough. Again, this is another example of having an idea in this movie, but they can't seem to know what they want to focus on. So, like, and I'll say this, there are two nice scenes with the Wade character. Like, I do like the scene where you see him in the shop, and it's at nighttime, and you see the Ghostbusters car going by the window, and you see him smell. I thought that was a nice moment. And the scene with him and Winston, where Winston's saying to him, like, you could have gotten the kids killed. Phoebe and Paul cast, those two characters. You can't be out in the field, you're getting older, you gotta find a new way to help the team. And I like the idea of Wade's character of him, like, not being able to let go of being a Ghostbuster and still loving the investigating supernatural paranoia. Like, supernatural things. And that's a nice scene, but it's not flushed out. This is my problem with this movie, is that they have ideas in this movie, but they're all underdeveloped. They don't spend enough time to really flush out that story. So for me, it's like I like the ideal way story. I think you could have just really could have been something good, but again, it just you didn't flush it out enough, so I didn't connect to it, and it came off just flat to me. But I would say Way has the most. I would say out of the Ghostbusters, he has the most screen time. I would say he has the most interesting story. I just wish it was flushed out more, and I just didn't. And since it wasn't, I just didn't connect to it. The character podcast from Afterlife, he's wasted too. Yeah, it's the same way as I forgot about the Lucky character, where he's just kind of wasting this movie. Like they referenced the scene where he like moved him at the Shopwood Way, and he said it told his parents he went to space camp, and it just felt like they just brought him back just because. And I love him in Afterlife. I thought he was really funny. I really loved his character in Afterlife. But it felt like they just brought him back just to be there because he was in the last movie. Again, this is another thing. I feel like I keep saying, they bring characters back, but I really don't feel like they knew what they would. They knew what to do with a lot of these characters. So he's just kind of wasted in this movie. I don't feel like he really adds anything to this movie, and he's mostly with Ray and Phoebe in most of the movie. Again, the whole splitting up the characters, I don't think was really the best idea when you have this many characters. So, and then when he comes to the new characters, I think Patton Oswalt is pretty much wasted in this movie. He's basically there to be exposition dump. He's there just to give information about the villain. Doesn't really do anything else in this movie. And it just felt like they wanted to like have a really great comedian actor in there. So I just felt like his character was just kind of like, he's there, but he doesn't really add anything. And there's this character, I can't remember the name, what actor name, but there's this character that works at this paranormal, supernatural organization that Winston set up, where you find out that he set up another place with a new version of the trap in the firehouse, so they can so they can have study ghosts and trap more ghosts, and like I said, study them, and that could have been interesting. That character though, he felt pointless. The character, he's just kind of there in the movie, and he's one of the new characters. But I didn't feel like I cared about his character. Same with Patton Oswalt's character. Like they're just kind of, again, I like the idea of spanning the lore and spanning a team, but the characters don't add anything to the story. And I just overall didn't care about the characters. And when it comes to the actor who I can't remember his name, he plays a character called Firemaster in this. He was in Atono's movie. He was in the Mall was Atono's movie where he played the Atono that was the movie star, and I think he's a funny guy. I didn't find him funny at all in this movie. His character felt out of place. He felt like a cartoon character to me. And I understand, like I said, I understand they're trying to like this movie was attractive. This movie wanted to go for kind of the vibe of the animated series, but he just felt out of place. I was like, his humor just felt flat to me. And where they take the dressing of the character, I wasn't a fan of. They sort of, at the end of the movie, give him powers, sort of. And just the dressing they took the character in, it didn't land for me. And I just wasn't a fan of it. And so I just didn't like the character. He wasn't funny to me, personally. So, at the end of the day, yeah, I was majorly disappointed in this movie. To me, I feel like Afterlife really set up some great stuff here. And I just left this movie feeling like, wow, my excitement for this franchise went away. Like, if they did another one, I would still be interested in it because I love Afterlife so much. But I think if you did another one, you really need to just focus on the new characters, because the way the original characters were used in this movie, I felt like could have been used better. Like, Ray's story could have been fussed out more. Bill Murray, I felt like could have been in the movie more. Winston, he was in it. He was in a decent amount, but I still felt like his character was underutilized. So overall, I wouldn't recommend Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, but look, if you're excited for the movie, go see it for yourself. You might have fun with the movie. But for me, as somebody who came off Afterlife, really excited for the future of this franchise, I just left the movie feeling like, okay, this is not a movie I would recommend personally. It's not a movie I would go back and rewatch again. And for me, it's one of the worst Ghostbusters movies for me personally. Like, it's not the worst. I still think the 2016 film is the worst. I still think this is slightly better than the Ghostbusters 2 because of the fact it does try to do some new things. Even if the execution didn't land for me, it does try to do some new things. So I'll probably place it as like the third best Ghostbusters movie. But I don't know, coming off of Afterlife, which had more of an emotional punch to me, and Afterlife felt more focused and tight and intimate. This just felt lifeless, flat, and just kind of messy when it comes to too many characters and a tone of comedy not landing for me and feeling too goofy. So that's my thoughts on Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Until next time, movie fans.